السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله
بسم
الرحمن
الله.
الرحيم، الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك نستغيث، فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا واصرف عنا واغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So we continue with Kitab al-Kisma, and this is the first one with regards to istihqaq. That is, if a claim is laid off, prior, or rather post, after distribution has been done, somebody lays a claim, a third party lays a claim to a portion of the property which was distributed, either a specific claim, this specific room or this specific piece belongs to me, or an unspecified piece, a third of it belongs to me, quarter, whatever, as the case may be. So we did 3 or 4 scenarios before this. Now they're saying, uh, ولو باع صاحب المقدم نصفه ثم استحق النصف الباقي رجع بربع ما في يد الآخر عندهما لما ذكرنا. That if the person who owns the front portion, for example, if he was to sell his off, right, so the kisma took place, he got a half of it, and then he sold his off, and after having sold his off, ثم استحق, somebody claimed the remaining off. That somebody claimed the remaining off. Right, so the person who has the back portion, so the front portion, sorry, he sold half of his. After he did so, somebody laid claim to the other half. And there was a specified portion which happened to be the remaining half, the unsold piece. Then what he's saying, رجع بربع ما في يد الآخر عندهما. And according to Tarfain, he can claim back a quarter of what is in the hands of his co-partner, for what we just mentioned previously. وسقط خياره ببيع البعض. However, his right thereafter, or his choice, to cancel the kisma, the distribution, or to ask for a redistribution will follow, will be waived. Why? Because by the sale of his portion, he sold it. Understand? He sold the portion. So by him selling it and losing out on that, he will have no right now to ask for redistribution of the remaining 3/4. وعند أبي يوسف رحمه الله تعالى ما في يد الصاحب بينهما نصفان. Yusuf Rahman says, I ever know, whatever is remaining in his partner's hand, he's off, he will get half of that. But he will get half of what his partner has, not a quarter. ويضمن قيمة نصف ما باع لصاحبه, and he will pay the value of the half which he sold to his partner. So he'll claim half of what his partner has, but then he must also pay his partner the value in cash of what he sold. لأن القسمة تنقلب فاسدة عنده. Why? Because in this instance, Imam Abu Yusuf Rahman is saying that the distribution has become invalid. So, why? Because first of all, they distributed without the permission or what happens to be the third partner that they either were unaware of or was it included in the first place that they were unaware of. So without his permission, without his consent, they distributed the property. Then this guy sold sold part of it which belonged to that person. Also not permissible. Because this is Bayul Fasid, selling somebody else's property is like Bayul Fasid without his consent. And so that person had a share in that sold piece. Oh, no, sorry. He didn't have a share in that sold piece because he's claiming the other half. So thereafter, he sold that person. Afterwards he sold his own share away. Understand? So therefore, this kisma will now be fasid. Understood? So therefore, the only part that's left is the half. So that's why he can claim half. But because he sold his share, which was supposed to have been part of the redistribution, which we cannot now anyway redistribute, that is why he will be liable for that loss to his partner. Understood? والمقبوض بالعقد الفاسد مملوك. Now the question arises, if that's the case, then obviously how could that person have sold the other piece? Won't it be fasid as well? Won't that sale also be fasid? So he's saying what was taken through, according to the Hanafi madhab, what was taken, what was owned or became what was owned through a invalid sale becomes ownership. What was taken through an invalid sale, the person becomes the owner of it, because in the Hanafi madhab, even if a person sells something to someone and the transaction turns out to be fast, not batil, fasid, then by that person taking hold, making qabza, by that person taking possession of it, he becomes the owner of that item, even though the transaction is why? Because the transaction itself is not affected, and the ayn is not affected. The sifa is because of a sifa uh, of the transaction. In other words, the manner in which the transaction was carried out that is making the transaction fasid. So the sale itself is fine, but it is the sifa, meaning the manner in this case in which it was sold, that is putting the transaction into fasad. That has corrupted the sale. So therefore, according to the Ahnaf, in mu'amalat, not ibadat, in mu'amalat, we make a distinction between fasid and batil. Batil is if the ayn and the sifat is completely incorrect. So therefore, as if they didn't buy and sell. But in the case of a fasid transaction, the transaction itself remains. They must just correct the corruption that came into it. So for nafad al-bay fee, so therefore the transaction will be upheld in the sale of that half. وهو مضمون بالقيمة. However, at the same time, he's liable for the value of the half that got taken away by this outside person. فيضمن النصف. So therefore, he will have to give half of that amount, pay half of that amount, which is the share of his partner. Understood?
Yeah.
Okay, inshallah, we will stop here for today, inshallah. Any question, anything you didn't understand?
No, I'm not understood it.
Inshallah. Okay, subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallah bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam wa ilmuhu atammu wa ahkam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yeah.